Welcome to Have a Life Teaching, the podcast designed for educators who are dedicated to enhancing their teaching practice and creating a positive impact on their students' lives. In each episode, we'll dive deep into the world of education, exploring a wide range of topics related to curriculum, instruction, and assessment in K-12 schools. Together, we'll learn from the brightest minds in the education field. So if you're a passionate educator who's ready to take your teaching practice to the next level, join us as we explore the exciting world of education. My name is John Shimbari, signing in and saying, let's have a life teaching. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Have a Life Teaching podcast. AI is revolutionizing every industry on the face of the planet. Rather than banning it, what do we as educators need to do to make our teaching better and to help students learn more efficiently and effectively? With that in mind, I'm very excited today to have my next guest joining us on the podcast. He is Jose Antonio Bowen. He is a senior fellow at the American Association of Colleges and Universities. He's a teacher, researcher, and former president of Goucher College. And he's got a brand new book coming out, Teaching with AI, a practical guide to a new era of human learning. He is also the author of Teaching Naked, How Moving Technology Out of Your College Classroom Will Improve Student Learning. So Jose, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, John. I'm glad to be here.
Jose, how did technology and artificial intelligence become an area within education that interests you?
Well, I started off like most people, just as a teacher. I was a piano teacher first, and then I got a degree in chemistry and taught chemistry and physics, eventually taught college. And of course, they don't teach you how to teach when you teach in college. I quickly realized I should have gone to those psychology courses, and I was a motivator. I often say that the real job is we are cognitive coaches trying to help people do the work that only they can do. And so I think the best analogy is the fitness coach. When you go to the gym, you have to do the work. But of course, what we like to do is watch our coach do the work for us. And the minute the coach says, oh no, I'm done, it's now your turn to do pull-ups. Students are always going to moan when you say it's your chance to do the work. But as long as we remember that watching someone else do push-ups is never very useful. Our job is to get students to do the push-ups that only they can do. And so I realized that to do that, I was really going to need to learn about teaching in psychology. And so I spent most of the next 40 years researching and understanding how humans are motivated. I wrote a book called Teaching Change, which is because I think that change is essential to what we're trying to get students to do. How do you get someone to change their mind? Turns out that's pretty hard. And then along the way, I ran into this thing called the internet, which everybody wanted to ban or it's going to be bad. I was interested in how technology could help or not help. And so there've been a lot of, this is going to change everything. And we've heard that a lot. But the truth is the internet did change everything. We went from this world where knowledge was scarce, but relatively reliable, into a world where the knowledge is abundant, but mostly unreliable. In the old days, we could say, well, here's what's in the textbook. Let me tell you what the answer is, and that's going to be the answer forever, and that's how this works. And now, most of what students need to know, we can't teach because the world and jobs are changing so quickly. Everybody wanted to be a computer science major. It's like, whoops, that's a major in the iPhone 1, right? And it turns out that AI is really good at coding. So the world is so for an unstable world, if we're trying to prepare students to graduate both into democracy, where they have to think for themselves, but also into a changing economic future, we have to focus on and help students learn to think for themselves. That doesn't mean that content's not important. Content is how we think. But it does mean that process has to take a little bit bigger place. And so I see technology has changed our world, certainly for the internet, in a way that actually critical thinking, asking better questions became more important. Google stuff, okay, is it relevant? Is it important? Is it right? That students have to be able to do that for themselves. Teaching is about preparing students for future success. That future is now less stable because what we have to teach them often hasn't been invented or discovered yet. And so what we're really teaching students is how to think for themselves. And that doesn't mean that content isn't important. It means that Process, though, has to also be a part of it. And we all think we teach process, but the truth is we mostly teach content and then we kind of try to shoehorn a little process in on the side. And so students actually don't know that we're doing it. And so we need to spend a little bit more time thinking about getting students to question their assumptions, to question the knowledge they encounter. Instead of giving students textbooks, letting them find information for themselves and then discover that some of it is wrong, because that's actually the way the world works.
You more or less foreshadowed my next question, which is, why do students need to be using AI? And you just said one reason right here, which is the world works in a way where we have an abundance of information, like you said, but not all of that information is necessarily accurate. So students do need to have those skills of finding information on their own, but then evaluating that information. So I could definitely see that, yes, as a major reason why, instead of banning the use of technology, particularly AI, it's here, it's not going anywhere. We as educators might, like I said, try to figure out how we can help our students harness the power of it. In addition to AI providing this wealth of information, again, we don't necessarily know the quality, but the wealth of information that it provides that then would allow our students to think about whether or not that's good information or true information. Why else do you think educators should be using more AI in how they're teaching students, whether on the university level or on my level, K-12?
There's two subtleties here. The first is that we are already being inundated with AI content, some of which is fake, or all of it, which is fake, I guess. We've already seen several cases where, did you get a robocall from someone who sounded like Joe Biden, or did Joe Biden actually call you? The skepticism that's been part of education since the internet, actually since Socrates, has become critical since the internet, is that we need to be skeptical about information, about email, about pop-ups, about even videos, what you think you see with your own eyes, because we are going to be inundated with phishing and emails that are designed personally to us, which are fake. So that is going to be an essential skill, in the same way that it's an essential skill that you recognize that Googling is not the same as research. That if you Google and get a bunch of stuff, that may be Bob in Idaho said that, but may not. How do you evaluate information? There's a subtlety here, which is that the difference is that internet changes our relationship with knowledge, but AI is going to change our relationship with thinking. AI is going to change thinking in the same way that the abacus or a dictionary or a calculator or a computer enhanced our ability to do things mentally. A dictionary is an aid. A thesaurus is an aid. It took work to create, real important human work. A dictionary or a thesaurus or a spell checker allows you to say, I'm no longer going to do this task of looking up all the words. I can now just use the spell checker. And what's interesting about that is that it changes the meaning of average. If you think, AI, I've tried it, its work is okay. So if that work is a C, if you say, I would only give that work a C, that's fine. That work has now been devalued because an AI can produce it for free. In the same way that when I paid people to type my papers many decades ago, being a fast typist was a monetizable skill. But once everybody had a computer and we were typing, so the average work that students do is not going to get them hired. No one is going to hire a C student anymore because AI can do good work. So that means we have to raise the bar. We have to get everybody to a better level, because what is the bit that AI can't do? So for teachers, the step one is, what is it that AI can do? And even if I think that's poor quality, that's now your F level. That's the floor. That's the new average, the new baseline. Like with a spell checker, right? We no longer, for the most part, think about, I've got to make sure the spell, just run it through a spell checker. And so that's why people don't spell as well anymore. Their handwriting isn't as good. All of those things have happened. Whatever AI ends up being able to do for good enough needs to be work that we say, you as a student now have to do better, or you have to bring something extra, some other kind of quality. Okay, AI could write this average mediocre essay, but you have to be able to write better, or you have to be able to find the errors and the hallucinations and be able to fix that. That means for teachers, you've got to at least know what average is. So at the very least, you should be trying out your assignments on AI, because your students are, to figure out where that is. And even if you say, well, okay, I need my students to do that to get to learn something, you have to recognize if all they can do is what AI can do, you're doing them a disservice and they're not going to be able to be employed later on. That leads me to the other point, which is that work has changed. If you go to the radiologist and you have a mammogram, you want the AI to read it first because you catch 20% more cancers. Senior lawyers do better work than junior lawyers. That's good. But AI can already do better, faster, cheaper work than junior lawyers. That's a good example because, okay, you obviously need to be a junior lawyer to learn to become a senior lawyer, but the research has found that, and this test was, can you find legal issues in these contracts? And the senior lawyers were the benchmark. And junior lawyers don't do as well. What's important is that I need to get to that senior, because the senior person has some extra. And so figuring out what that extra quality is. And so for teachers, if you hate AI, that's fine, but you need to be able to identify clearly for your students what is the extra human quality that AI cannot do. And if you can't do that, I mean, banning it doesn't do any good. That's like saying, I don't want to know. It's like, well, I don't want to read the news these days either. But at the end of the day, I probably need to know who becomes the president. You need to know what AI can do, and you're going to only find that out by experimenting.
While you were talking, what was resonating with me is this idea that AI is a new baseline. And to your point, if your students are producing just what AI can produce, you're doing them a disservice because they're going to need to get to that senior level, they're going to need to be able to do something on top of what AI can provide.
Even to get to the junior, that's the irony. Even to get that entry-level job, the thing that AI is currently doing is replacing intern that used to do the draft. Write a draft press release for my company. Well, that takes months, maybe a year to learn how to write in the company style. AI can learn that. And here are the 70,000 press releases we've already done, learn to write in the company style. And that's the other thing. I think that people, so if you've only tried free AI, you've been talking to an infant. Essentially, you have used a modem for dial-up AOL, and you think, oh, I understand. The internet's not such a big deal because you've been using a modem. And so you have to use a better AI. So Copilot is free, and you can get access to GPT-4 when it's not too crowded. Claude 3 is actually a pretty good, it's free at the moment. But the other thing is that if you are asking AI to do things that you would Google, like, where is a good burger restaurant near me? That's like going to Einstein and saying, Einstein, how do you spell cat? He might just laugh at you, right? You've got this intelligence that's better than Google. Ask it something interesting. Turns out that if you ask it, write me an opening paragraph for this essay, but write in this kind of style, read my previous emails to my principal, and help and convince the principal. What are the arguments that my principal likes to use in all of her previous speeches and all of her previous email? Or here's a grant I want to write. What are the grants that won? What do they have in common? Can you help me make my proposal better? Notice that it's a co-thinker. It's like the dictionary. It's a tool that you use that will make your work better. And the thing to remember about AI is that it's not going to replace a lot of human jobs. What's going to happen is people who don't use AI will get replaced with people who do use AI. In the same way that if I graduated students who had to look up every word in a dictionary instead of using a spell checker, are going to be slower than the students who used a spell checker. What we call cheating, business calls progress. The other thing AI is going to do is it's going to change creativity. All of us are now more creative. 300 new ways to do this. I need 12 new ways to introduce this subject to my students. Can I make this assignment more inclusive? Could I make this assignment harder? Could I take this concept and put it into simpler terms? Could you give me analogies that my students who like basketball but don't like football would like? Those are great uses for AI. They don't replace humans, but those are the sorts of things people need to start experimenting with, is thinking about, how can AI make me a more creative person, or make my assignments or my work better or more creative?
Can you think of other ways, Jose, maybe 2 or 3 other ways, if a K-12 teacher or a university teacher is listening to this podcast, they could go into their classroom tomorrow and use AI?
With AI, what you could do is you could take your class list or ask your students to do a little poll Tell me about yourself. Tell me about how big your family is. How many siblings do you have? What foods do you like? What sports teams do you like? Where do you live? And then I output that as a spreadsheet. And then I take my problem set or my assignment and I give it to AI with my spreadsheet. And I say, I would like you to produce customized, individualized assignments for every single student in my class, starting with their name. Because when my doctor sends me a text that says, Jose, are you feeling better? I know he didn't send the text. I know it's a machine, but I still feel better. Turns out that when I say, John, you wake up in class because I've said your name. And so we've known for years that my exams should use the names of my students. First of all, it's going to be culturally more diverse. If I have a diverse class and I have names of people, but also when you see your name. So now AI can take this to a whole nother level where you get a problem set that says that you like the Buffalo Bills, and I get a problem that says I like the Dallas Cowboys. AI can do that kind of customization, and that's an easy way to create assignments that will be more motivating for students. How about the makeup test? So-and-so was sick. I now need a test of exactly the same difficulty, but with new examples that I can give. Those sorts of things are easy to do. But I think there's a huge opportunity for equity here. There's a Hindu holiday coming up this month. I don't know what that's about, but can ask the AI, help me make my assignment more culturally sensitive. Help me make us more interesting. Can you give me an assignment that I could give that would be a little more culturally relevant? And maybe I don't give it to everybody. Maybe I just give, right? I could give them to different students of different religious backgrounds. Or here's another one. So ask an AI like Copilot or Perplexity that's connected to the internet. Say, so I need a 3-minute video that would be a great introduction to third graders about subject X. I want you to give me a 75-word summary of each video and the source and the link for every video. AI is really good with complex tasks that are multivalent. It's also a way to get feedback. AI is a great grader. And if you take home 30 essays, it's going to take you a little while to read them. And so I have taught an AI to grade and give feedback like I do in my voice. It gives you immediate objective, and there's a key, objective feedback. It's also actionable. It turns out that humans are noisy graders. In other words, after lunch, if lunch isn't good, I give harder grades. My sports team loses, I give harder grades. We know this. The AI could be biased, but it's not going to be noisy. It's going to do this. So it's a much more consistent provider of feedback. The other thing, right, when I give feedback, like all of us, I say, here are 6 things to improve about your essay. That's 5 too many. I could tell the AI, what is the most important thing this student, right? Give the student one thing they should do to make their essay better. And so even maybe before you take the grade. So I want you to take your drafts and I want everybody to put their drafts into the AI and ask, and here's the rubric, and ask for one way to make it better. AI is a great tutor. It's also much more patient than I am. It is not going to take the jobs of teachers, but it is going to allow you to do less tedious work in the same way that a spell checker allowed you to do less tedious work. I can ask all sorts of questions. It doesn't mind the volume. It'll do all those things. So on the one hand, for teachers, what are the tedious things that you don't want to do? And on the other hand, what are the tedious or average things that AI will do in future work that your students will not need to do? We teach long division differently now because calculators change. I mean, we still have to understand number sense, but I remember as a kid, I spent a lot of time adding up long columns of sums and doing long division. Seems like we spent at least a whole year doing that. Everybody at work uses a calculator. Do I need to know when the calculator made a mistake? Yes. But if I can't use a calculator, I'm going to have a hard time becoming an accountant.
Jose, I know there's tutorial AI like Midjourney. In fact, I've even used Midjourney to create images for some of my social media posts. Do you see a way to use pictorial AI in our classrooms, whether in K-12 or at the university level?
So one of the things you can do is if you're teaching art history, teach an AI how to paint like Picasso, which is harder than it seems because you can give it examples, but the AI doesn't necessarily know what about those examples am I supposed to copy? Do you want me to copy the colors, the shapes? And so understanding what style is actually is another human thing. AI is also a great way to do what if. So what would happen if I did this? What would happen if I made a pizza and I put pineapples on top of it? Let's see what that looks like. There's a NASA scientist who says it's like designing connecting with an alien, because an AI doesn't have inhibitions. This is back to why it's more creative. Humans, oh, I don't want to say that because John will think I'm stupid if I say that. So we all self-monitor, but AIs don't, which is why they hallucinate, which is a problem. But of course, what do we call a person who hallucinates? An artist. Well, I don't have the skill to do all the art for a graphic novel, but instead of assigning an essay that a student, I don't want to write this essay, how about you make a graphic novel about it? And you could use AI as a tool to help you do it. Or how about you design a video game? There are now AIs that can allow you to design your text adventures or full video games. Or how about role playing? I want you to have a conversation with Martin Luther King with AI. And so, and I can set, again, there are already websites that are set up to do this, or Mark Twain. And so what I want you to do is have a conversation with Mark Twain and then save the transcript. You have to ask at least 10 questions. So notice a couple of things. One is what I'm really testing is not Mark Twain's responses. Of course, I'm testing your questions. Did you ask better questions? And then I ask you to save the transcript so you can't cheat because you have to do the thing and then get a transcript from an AI. But also, why would you want to cheat? You're going to get to talk to Mark Twain or Socrates or Miles Davis. That's fun. There's an opportunity here. I don't have to have everybody talk to Mark Twain. You like Mark Twain? Talk to Mark Twain. You want to talk to Miles Davis? Again, in terms of inclusivity, students could pick a figure that's important to their culture, have a conversation. Here's a first question. You ask 10 follow-ups. You're learning how to think. You're having some fun. And then maybe you have to fact check it. I think there's a whole new world of assignments that are both going to be more motivating and fun for students, but also more relevant to what they're eventually going to do in the world. And so I encourage people to experiment, to think about other kinds of creative assignments, things that we couldn't do before, but now we can do because AI can make pictures and you don't have to draw. You just have to be able to tell it what you want. And so we've been doing silly things like, show me a cat that's hula hooping. It does that. And the students are often doing that to make their memes and things. And so this is a chance for us to redirect that energy in a useful way.
Jose, we've talked a lot about the promise of AI, why we need to ensure that we're using AI in our teaching. I think our conversation has been rich, but I'm sure there's always something that we haven't covered yet. What do you think our audience members should know about teaching with AI that we haven't yet addressed?
Well, so the first thing I'd say is AI is also dangerous. It's also scary. Even if it's not going to take your job, it is going to change your job. But it's dangerous and scary in the same way that the internet is, or a computer is. A computer and the internet are technologies that allow me to do amazing things, but also allow people to share how to make a nuclear bomb or create a terrorist attack. And the truth is, there is no way for us to have the internet and computers without also having to worry about, wow, bad people could use this technology to send spam email. And AI is going to explode both like a shovel, or right? You can use it for good or for evil. And so understanding what it can do is the first thing. Start with Perplexity or Copilot or Gemini. If you want to have conversations, P-I-A-I is interesting. Claude is another. You should have some exposure to some of the different kinds of thinking, because even if you were to read my new book and take all this advice, I think the first thing for everybody to do is to realize that this is here to stay. This is not like MOOCs or some of the other sort of false new technologies. This is really like the internet. This is going to change. It's already in your life, right? Your spam filter is already AI, Netflix, Amazon. I think the better approach is to say, how do I engage my students in discussion? The last thing I'd say about what everybody needs to know is you should all be talking to your students about this. You may need a policy, you might not need a policy, but you should certainly be talking about things like disclosure. So when you did this assignment, did you do it all yourself? Did you use a spell checker? Should you have to disclose if you use a spell checker or a dictionary? Do you have to disclose if you used AI? Those are kinds of help too. And so this is a chance to have a discussion about the ethics of, is asking AI for a suggestion to make your essay better the same as asking your mother, is my spelling okay? Or is it different? I don't care what you decide, but what I do care is that your students need to be actively having this discussion, because we didn't do this well with the internet and some bad things happened, and also how it's useful, and even having discussions about, well, Is it okay, right? If you write a Valentine to your girlfriend and your AI writes it, or you write a birthday card for your mother and you use AI, is that less authentic? Well, did you use a spell checker before you sent your email to your mother? I don't know the answer, but I do know that it's gotten much more complicated. And something like using Grammarly, which most people were okay with, right? Grammarly is AI. Grammarly will now do a lot more for you in the same way that Microsoft Word does more than just check your spelling. It checks your grammar, those little blue lines, right? All of that. And so we can't ignore that. In the same way that we can't ignore the calculator and we can't ignore the dictionary, we need to be paying attention to this and actively engaging our students with the discussion of, if you use this template, if you use this idea, are you less creative? Can you do that's better than what the average person can do? Because this is not going to go away.
Jose, where can people find out more about you and the work that you do?
You can Google me. I have a couple of TED Talks about education. So you can, Jose Bowen in video will turn up some things. I have a website, josebowen.com. I also have teachingnaked.com. That's a metaphor, of course. I'm not actually suggesting that, but it's a metaphor for teaching without technology, because I believe, my Teaching Change book is all about but I think the new 3 R's, the old 3 R's were reading, writing, arithmetic, were content focused. So the new 3 R's are relationships, resilience, and reflection. They are more process focused. If you create relationships and you think about resilience and reflection, your students will be prepared for a world of the future, which is unknown. You can find out more about all of those things on either of those websites, teachingnaked.com or Jose Bowen, and there's plenty of video out there. And sure, buy the Teaching with AI book.
Thank you so much for your time today, Jose. This has been a really informative conversation.
You're welcome. Thanks a lot, John.
Thank you for listening today. I hope you got some great tips that you can bring back into your teaching. Remember, have a life teaching without sacrificing your own. Also, don't forget to subscribe and be well.